So in the beginning there was this castle, and it was the stronghold during those early years of the McRaes, fighting and marauding, I suppose you'd call it, other parts of the land. It's a very old castle. At the moment, the keeper of it is Colonel Gilstrap McRae, and he is a distant cousin of mine. Through the Genealogy Society, they wrote and told me that that present owner was actually a cousin of mine. And an inscription above one of the doors in Gaelic meant, "Never let there be a McRae inside with a McRae outside." In other words, a McRae was welcome at any time. That's Allendonham Castle. Now, my great-grandfather, Donald McRae, was head gamekeeper at Balmoral Castle. His name was Alexander McRae, and he was married to Annie McRae,
Good.
who was my mother's great-grandmother. Now, this is a photo of my grandmother Christina McRae, and my grandfather Donald McRae when they were married. And that photo was taken in George Street in Dunedin. That's their wedding photo. There's a photo of Annie Isabel McRae, my mother, when she was about 12. And they lived down in Middlemarch, in the South Island. This is a photo later on of the four McRae sisters. Auntie Jessie, Auntie Kitty, my mother, and Auntie Molly. My mother was about 5'5". She wasn't very tall, but her sisters were all about 5'8". They were very tall, big women. And they all lived down in central Otago. And this is the Annans, early photos. I haven't got many of the Annans, but this is them. And it's in the backyard of the Railway Hotel, which grandfather bought. And in it is Auntie Daisy at the back, Auntie Daisy, Dad, Uncle Bill, and coming to the front is grandfather's old Irish mother, who was Mary Flanagan and came from Tipperary, and Auntie Edie sitting beside her. Can you see that?
Yeah. That's good.
This is my mother and father just after they were married, up in Napier, standing behind the bar of the Railway Hotel, which was down at the port, virtually opposite the Iron Pot. Now here is a photo of my father when he was about 18, just before he went into the Navy. That's my father there, the dark one, and these are two of his friends. And then when the war came out, my father was already in the Navy, and this is his friend Fred Bates, who initially went into the army, but later got his deep sea captain's ticket and it went all over New Zealand on his boat and over to Australia, trading, taking produce. One in particular of my father in his Navy uniform shows how dark he was by comparison with his friend, Fred Bates. And we have always thought that my father's mother came from Cornwall, and we always felt that there was some dark blood there, dark Spanish blood in there. At the back of the yard of the Railway Hotel, you can see how dark my father is, and plus his sister Edith sitting down beside our grandmother, my great-grandmother, their grandmother, Mary Flanagan from Tipperary. And she was very dark. And she had very, very beetly eyebrows, untidy eyebrows, which I have noticed grandfather had too, and is a heritage of a lot of Irish people, those untidy eyebrows. I've seen people on the TV who were Irish, and lo and behold, they had those untidy eyebrows, bushy eyebrows.
Not like yours.
Not like my, no, I look like the McRae side of the family.
Okay.
This one's an Annan.
Was it Spanish or Portuguese?
No, Spanish. No. And that's where the darkness comes from, because he had a dark skin
It's
too.
Donny you're talking about.
Pardon?
It's Donny you're talking about.
Donny, yes. But Raymond is blue-eyed with a fair skin. And I have a dark skin, but I've got blue eyes too. So it's a bit of a mystery. But it is there. And he was tall and thin. As you can see, he was tall and thin. Not like Raymond. Dark hair, green eyes, greeny hazel eyes, and a very long aquiline nose. Now, this is a photo of my mother holding Donny when I would say he was about a month old. And his name actually wasn't Donny, it was William Donald Francis Annan, but he was called Donny. Donny was after her father. William was after my uncle Bill. Francis was after my uncle Frank, and all our names, with the exception of the girls, were family names. So that's Donny. And here's a photo of my mother holding Donny, and by the background I would say it was somewhere behind the railway station, down at the Railway Hotel, down at the Iron Pot, that one. Here's one of Donny when he was about, I suppose, a year old. It's a lovely photo. And he was a very lovely baby, really. And then came me. And that's one of the earlier photos I have of Donny and I. And these were all taken by a Napier photographer who took all our photos down through the years, Dighton. There's Dighton, I think his name was. But that was quite a nice photo. This is a little dark one. I don't know that you'll be able to see that, but that's Donny holding me out in the backyard behind the hotel somewhere. Now, I think, it's got it written here in my mother's handwriting, wee Joyce, 4 weeks. And there's a photo of me at 4 weeks. All right?
Yep.
Now I'm about 2 months, about 8 months old or 10 months old here with Donnie. That was a hand-knitted woolen frock I've got on, and that woolen suit that Donnie has got on, my grandparents had just come back from America, and they brought him that suit, and he's very proudly standing there with his flash American suit on. And then came Raymond. There he is when he went into the baby show, and then a little bit older when he could walk.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother then had 3 children, and this is a photo of Auntie Kitty, who came up to be to help my mother with these young children. So me on her lap and Raymond and Donnie standing beside her. And Auntie Kitty would have been about 20 or something like that there in that photo. On the back of this one, Donnie got the mumps, and there he is sitting on the veranda at the front of the house with a cloth wound like an Easter bunny around his head. And that's him a little older with me standing there. And here I am. They used to call me the little Irish washerwoman with that apron on, standing there, a photo of me. And a little older, that's me having my photo taken outside my father's office. And Donnie ginking round the corner to see what was going on, didn't realise he'd be photographed too. So he came out as well. And this old man here is grandfather McRae, Donald McRae, and that's Edith as a baby. Was about 10. We entered the competitions and sang a duet called Sophie and Barry. It was a musical comedy one, and that's Raymond and I sang that, and we won that section in the competitions, right? And then here's a family photo of Donnie in his school blazer and me with my 12 to 16 champion elocutionist medal pinned on my tartan jacket, and that tartan jacket was the Black Watch. No, the Gordon tartan. But there we all are, and Raymond over at the side, and Edith sitting down there in front of Donnie almost. And those photos were all taken by A.B. Hurst, I think, A.B. Hurst, a well-known photographer in Napier. And once the boys wanted a tent, so my father got a tent and erected it way out the back of the house, and the boys used to sleep there in the summer. And they each had a torch, and they used to call cat calls and get under the blankets and shine the torch through the sheet and all sorts of things. But there I am, and that's my convent uniform I've got on, so I must have been going to the convent at that time. And this is a lovely photo when Donnie won the 12 to 14 musical section at the competitions. He was entitled to a free photograph, and my mother went with him. And that's a lovely photo of Donnie. I was also lucky. My elocution teacher, May MacDonald, was into everything, and she was the producer of the Repertory Club, and she produced several musicals for the Operatic Society, and I belonged to both those things. And I mean, say I was only about 17. I was only quite young. And then they asked me to do that thing in Broadacres, and something else happened that I got, that I was offered. And I often thought how damn lucky I was to have those experiences. You know, because not everybody got things like that.
When the train reaches Napier, Brother John is at hand to welcome his sister home and to welcome sister's friend. Judith wants to know why John hasn't come up to date with a streamlined car, but he's conservative. He doesn't believe in changing mounts without good reason. There's room for them all, and away they go along Napier's Marine Parade and out into the peaceful countryside. You know, one of the charms of New Zealand is that it's only a step from city to country, and from city life to country life, so to speak. Just a little way further, and here we are at the homestead, where Mother is waiting to welcome the prodigal daughter and her friend. Young Sister Anne seems all taken up with a package that looks suspiciously like something from a dressmaker's, and probably it is. A stroll around the grounds will fill in time while the fatted lamb is being prepared for dinner, after which, as Mr. Pepys would say, and so to bed. Another day and business as usual, or rather more than usual, as it's shearing time. John has already gone to the sheds, and now the girls want to see how the work is progressing. Judith is going to ride around the family acres to see how the flocks have fared during her absence. Meanwhile, Anne is going to show Marcia the rest of the grounds, and later they'll all meet at the shearing sheds. 1,200 sheep a day are being shorn at this station, and still they come. Thousands more customers for Sheepland's barber shop. At this time, New Zealand's flocks total 29 millions, so no wonder that sheep farming is one of the country's chief primary industries, and that wool is one of New Zealand's leading exports. Hello there. Is something wrong with this one? Or is it just tired of walking? Ah, here come two of the girls. Our friend from the city seems to be taking a great interest in watching the woolly tide roll into the yards. Roll along, little woolies, roll along. It's a strenuous time, and it would be much harder still if we didn't have the dogs to help us. Over the fences, into the thick of the work. Marcia wants to know how long the rest of the shearing will take, and what would happen if we had a change in the weather. Well, John wouldn't be at all pleased if it turned wet in the middle of the shearing season. Here you are. This is how the sheep are relieved of their overcoats nowadays. New Zealand is full of lakes and rivers, and hydroelectric power is available nearly all over the country. This has enabled electric shearing machines to revolutionize this part of the business, so that now a man can shear nearly as many sheep in a day as grandfather could in a week. With these electric machines, one man can shear 350 to 400 sheep in one day. Fleeces vary in weight, of course, but they average about 12 pounds to 15 pounds each. A heavier overcoat than you or I would like to wear. What on earth makes them jump like that, is what the girls would like to know. Oh, they're just full of animal spirits, says John. And then, of course, they've a big load off their minds now. This method of loading the wool bales onto the trucks is only 1 horsepower, but it's quite effective. As the trucks are loaded, they set off for the big wool stores, where mountains of wool are dealt with. Highly qualified experts closely examine the fleeces and check their grading according to type and quality, and all the details are carefully catalogued. New Zealand's wool brokers are justifiably proud of the organisation of these sales, which are important not only to New Zealand, but also to most of the manufacturing countries of the world. Some of the best grades of wool are bought by the Dominion's own mills, which manufacture 1.25 million pounds worth of high-quality woolen goods each year, and employ several thousand New Zealanders. In large, well-lighted stores, the bales are set out for inspection with ends opened and wool pulled out for close scrutiny. Buyers from all over the world come to New Zealand for these sales. They examine the wool beforehand and note the lots for which they intend to bid. This is an important business, for in addition to sales for local manufacture, New Zealand exports some 14 million pounds worth of wool a year. Probably you've never attended a wool sale, so let's go along with John and the girls to this one. It's most important to John, and he does enjoy seeing the buyers leap out of their seats in their eagerness to bid.
9 there. 9 pence. Marshall. 76.
83.
88. 9. 1. 9 1. Pass Hill. 7. How much? 9 pence.
And so one wool season ends and the next begins. This season's clip commences its travels to the world's manufacturing centres, while the flocks from which it came are growing next season's wool on the broad acres of New Zealand's sunny pasture lands.
One berry in the glowing morn among the gleaming grass, to wander as we've wandered many a mile, and blow the cool tobacco cloud and watch the white reef pass. the saddle all of the while.
So there we are.
Now,
Oh, I'm sorry, getting cold. Nice to see you.
Hi, Joyce, how are you?
Good afternoon. Surprise, surprise.
Hello, Ronnie.
how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you.
There's extra surprise for you.
You've already met. This is my wife. This is John. Peter.
Oh, okay, yes, no, I never met you.
Yes,
So please take your places at the table and we will begin with some of the formalities before we actually start on the food.
Thank you, sir.
It's quite all right. Getting together for this day to celebrate Mother's coming of age. And it's a real credit, I think, to family and friends to realise that we are almost all here. An excellent turnout. We're here not because she's a star of stage, screen, radio, and I've even heard video, but because she has in one way or another been a positive influence and link in many of our lives. But as Mother's theatrical experience will testify, if you haven't got an audience, you haven't got a show.
Oh, very good.
Very good. So on her behalf and the immediate family, I'd like to thank you all for being with us on this very special occasion, and be assured that just by your presence, you made the birthday girl, wee Joyce, very, very happy. So, to make it a little bit more unusual, we're going to open the show with a very robust rendition of Happy Birthday, Dear Joyce. Please stand. Charge your glass. If you want to do the actions, you know, Dear Joyce, please feel free to do so. Don't injure yourself, kid. Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Joyce. Happy birthday to you. Thank you. Now that was so successful, I think we'll go into the opening number, which we are all going to do before we actually start on the food. And I'm going to ask Postman Pat and his very good assistants if they will please. Mother has always been a great writer. So these are little envelopes on which we've written some words to a popular song which we are all going to sing very clearly and loudly. Sweet 16, you're beautiful and mine. You come on like a queen. Right? Here we go. You come on like a queen.